I was, discussing uh, France 24, which is English speaking French channel, news channel, and the program, this talk show, the debate. Would that have, really a great debate actually. Uh, so there were really three distinguished learned guests, one from United Kingdom, a professor, and one from United States, a journalist, and then uh, somebody from European Disruptive Institute, as president. Uh, the impression was basically it was trying to rationalize uh, the trade policy of United States of America, or you can say that the trade policy and the tariff regime that is uh, practiced by the White House or the government of presidency of uh, Donald Trump. Uh, but let me, at a theoretical level, discuss and make a certain premise because, again, it is so relevant to my thesis because they would talk about institutional understanding and how it will relate to then um, a kind of diplomacy which might not really be considering how institutional aspects would be considered. For example, institutions, one of them is rule of law or government effectiveness or regulatory quality. I mean, there are legal institutions, economic and social institutions. And yes, it's been a lot of work, uh, with the advent of 21st century, a lot of work has came out following the work of Douglas North, who is really pioneer in research on institutions and its relevance for economic development for each sovereign nation state. Uh, these governance institutions will be legal institutions or economic or social. Uh, so institutional development is central to the theme of, let's say, uh, uh, economic development as such. Sustainable economic development can't really happen without practice of robust institutional frameworks. Democracy could as well be considered as an institutional or an institutional framework which promotes citizen rights, which promotes freedom, which promotes uh, creativity, innovation, political stability, and many other things. And that evidence has been coming out with examples within the regions like Africa or Latin America, or it is kind of an analysis that establishes the fact that uh, dictatorships in 1980s, and it will even continue to the first decade of 21st century within Latin America, would really be detrimental to institutional development. While at the same time, there are democratic movements all across the world, in Latin America, Africa, Asia. But then, of course, the world is also defined by less than democratic governments. And then you need to orient your debate towards policy aspects as well, not only the theoretical aspects. Uh, and there are so many policy aspects. And there could be a political economy approach. Political economy approach would put more emphasis on historic precedents. And yes, indeed, historic precedents would simply say that the institutional development is central to economic development, while policy making might have a different view. Policy making comes with the wisdom of the policymakers, and policymakers could be representing the national institutions of governance, or they can be national level policymakers, will be defined through bureaucracy, civil and military, and the politicians, while at the same time assisted by think tanks, research institutions, universities, or chamber of commerce, to then make effective policies for social development, institutional development, and capitalistic market structures which promote entrepreneurship and business competitiveness to then allow the country to really approximate to the incomes of the developed countries through convergence hypothesis with significant rise in gross domestic product. But yet again, I would give an example of China and India. The success stories of China and India and East Asia is all about policy making. It's not really an approach that would encourage political economic themes, but yet political economy is also central, as it would be central for the future of the United States of America and Europe, and even in India, especially considering the emergence of identity crisis. Political economy approach would say that society is an integral part of national and international governance. Global citizenship or local citizenship is inherently important to determine national development and even economic growth. Now, society represents households. You can say that they are economic households, or they can be differentiated with ethical, ethnic, or religious diversity. But at the same time, there could be occupational diversity as well, representing different sectors: agriculture sector, manufacturing sector, as well as services sector. But at the same time, it could also be representing participation in international markets and could represent exporting sector or importing sector. Now, society would inherently be about people, and people would, their rights and interests are delivered through better rule of law, but then more importantly, it would be about economic empowerment. And that's the central theme of capitalism. While society would seem to meet its interests, would secure its interests through socialist ideology, because labor productivity aspect in political economy would suggest that it has just been a decade or more than a decade that labor productivity is confirmed through the development and introduction of technology firms, which are multi-billion-dollar firms. While for most of the cases, international trade would then allow trade patterns whereby, as the Standard Trade Treaty would suggest, that China, most of the trade orient or companies will outsource their production activities to China, East Asia, or India, is because there is cheap, unskilled and semi-skilled labor available, and there is surplus labor. While at the same time, it is really, in the credit of China to then transform that trade opportunity into phenomenal economic success, whereby for decades China would be having GDP economic growth rate more than 6%, and then transform this economy to then become a second largest economy and the major exporting country that is exporting across the world, across all the regions: Latin America, Africa, larger Asia, Europe, America, and Australia. While at the same time, this international trade would be directed towards significant learning by doing, and therefore, China would climb the technology ladder, and then would be a pioneer in, for example, introducing its own initiatives that would define the future of social media or digital technologies or information technology sector, while at the same time developing its own products that would represent futuristic artificial intelligence technologies and initiatives. So the future of China is pretty much secure, but at the same time India's future is pretty much secure as well. But then the story of institutional development there would be a confusion somewhere, because China is not really a democracy, while in India, which is oriented towards secularism and diversity, has significant identity crisis, whereas Muslim populations are being mistreated, which is not good in a country which has a secular orientation, whereas Hindutva would emerge as a force which is not positively disruptive, but then would really tarnish the image of India uh, in the world. Uh, so, what is happening? How would political economy and policy making would address it? That's the real question. Inherently, India is a democracy and a secular society. So, political economy argument would say that maybe it's BJP government which has to be blamed. But then one has to look at the society. That why BJP is coming for many elections as the most popular party. What is happening to the Indian society? This economic confidence has been directed into identity crisis. Political economy, understanding political economy of China, would then bring an economic argument that how could China really become a second largest economy through historical accounts, and then for 30 years China is representing a policy that would allow capitalist orientation and transform Chinese economy into a capitalist economy while retaining its socialist political orientation, and thereby be able to achieve significant poverty reduction for millions of Chinese. And so, with this basic premise, one can then start understanding the issues in the regions like Africa and Latin America. Indeed, political economy would say that Latin America, countries like Brazil or Argentina, have been the case of exploitation as a method of new colonization. And that's the story of 1980s and 1990s. But that story has to be changed. I mean, for the world of policy making and how policy making is understood and constructed through international institutions of governance, while it is at the same time regional initiatives like Brazil, Russia, India, China, BRICS, which is a trade, regional trade partnership program with WTO. Now, interest of it was that Brazil, Russia, India, and China are the most promising emerging economies of the world, while at the same time are by area and population are the largest economy of the world. All these four countries. And then, with that perspective, how would you orient political economy approach and policy making approach? If you want to understand Brazil historically, then the argument might be right. But then you need to understand Latin America has peculiar characteristics. To define a society, Latin Americans and Brazilians or Argentinians or Uruguayans or Costa Ricans, they are liberal inherently. They promote human rights primarily. There is significant gender development and empowerment and sensitization within the society, Latin American society. They have strong roots with European countries. They are highly respected, especially in Europe. Latin America is, kind of a, being a Latin American is kind of a, becoming, kind of a very focal position. If you travel to Europe, or a Latin American travels to Europe, they are by default, they are like as if Pakistanis are traveling to Turkey. So with such a, strongly based social values, why Latin America is lagging behind?